A huge thank you to patron Ilamise Poulis for suggesting today's video topic. If you want to suggest a topic for next Wednesday's Name Explain video, then all you have to do is support Name Explain on Patreon for just $1 a month. Find out more by visiting patreon.com/Name Explain, which we linked down below. Anyway, in the early 20th century, it was decided that the city of St. Louis in Missouri would be home to a monument of some kind to celebrate the city's past as the final frontier before the Wild West. For the longest time, the city had been known as the Gateway City, or the Gateway to the West, so it kind of made sense why a monument which reflected this title would fit here. Eventually, the chosen design was the arch the city is now famous for, and by 1965, construction on Gateway Arch, as it had been dubbed, was complete, giving the city its iconic monument. But it wasn't just the archway which was plopped into the city, however. The land which surrounded the arch would receive a makeover as the years went by. It became surrounded by greenery, trees, and cute little pathways. It was a nice little green space in the middle of the wider urban sprawl. But this is all it kind of is, a little area of very well maintained greenery. It's way smaller than the city's other park, Forest Park, and even smaller than NYC's iconic Central Park. Yet, despite this, in 2018, this tiny plot of land with a huge arch in the middle of it was designated a National Park of the United States. Now, this isn't a dig at Gateway Arch National Park, or even St. Louis as a whole. Viewers will know I love this city. Go T-Rabs and the City Museum and holding a Ted Drew's upside down over your head. But don't go Cardinals, as they suck right now. It is undoubtedly insane that this tiny area is a national park. And that's mainly because the idea of a national park tends to be something much more grand in scope. Most of us, even those outside of the USA, have a fair understanding of what a national park is. They're huge, sprawling areas of wild, untouched natural beauty given this designation to make sure they stay this way. Places like Yellowstone, the Everglades, Mount Rainier, and Death Valley are some prime examples of national parks in the USA, and this system even exists outside the states too. Here in the UK, areas like Dartmoor, the Lake District, and the Brecon Beacons are all protected as national parks too. What this all means is that when we think of a national park, we don't really think of a human-made structure surrounded by some manicured grass and trees in the middle of a city. It would make way more sense if the US instead dubbed the Gateway Arch a national monument, another title the country gives to land areas. This is what the Statue of Liberty is, so it would make sense to give this title to the arch too. Yet, then again, there's an issue with this title as well, as something like the Devil's Tower in Wyoming, or even the Sonoran Desert in Arizona are considered national monuments too, and not national parks, despite the fact they'll make way more sense as parks instead of monuments. It's becoming abundantly clear that the USA has a very odd naming system for their land areas. And it's not just the title of national park and national monument we have to deal with here. There's a huge array of titles the country uses, which are all bundled together in something called the National Park System. This idea came into being in 1872 when Yellowstone was labelled the first national park of the country, with the idea of protecting the area so the natural beauty could be enjoyed by the people. From here, more parks came into being, and those various other titles sprouted up for places which aren't quite parks but worth protecting. There are around 19 different subcategories in the national park system, and I say around as there are kind of some other ones, but we don't need to get into the minutiae of those here. We've got enough on our plates right now. Each of these subcategories are encapsulated in appropriate titles which reflect a different kind of land area, and conversely, what kind of land area it is dictates what kind of title it receives, though clearly it doesn't always work out perfectly. So let's dive into those 19 areas and explain what qualities they ought to have to get one of those titles. And of course, the most well-known of these titles being National Park. This includes those aforementioned like Yellowstone, Rainier, and of course Gateway Arch. These are the big guns in all of this. The initial idea before the concept was expanded greatly. For a land to acquire the title of National Park, they tend to be large, diverse areas with outstanding natural features. This title is often given to places which have the most protection too. In most national parks, you won't be able to do things like hunt the wildlife or mine the land for resources. Similar to national parks, we have national preserves. Seemingly, a key difference between a park and a preserve is the fact that preserves tend to be a tad less tight around their regulations. In some cases, you can do things like hunt and mine on preserves, something you can't do in parks. Many preserves are also close by to parks. For example, while there's Denali National Park found in Alaska, there's also Denali National Preserve too in the surrounding area. Am I the only one who thinks these titles really should be switched around? To me, preserve implies that the land can't be touched and should be, preserved, while park implies it's a land area meant for humans to do various activities in. Honestly, this whole naming system is kind of a mess. I would suggest the USA do something about it, but the country has enough on its plate right now. Like, seriously, sort it out, guys. I really want to come visit the States again, but I'm actually scared that I'm going to be deported because of some videos I've made in the past. Like, it's not great right now, guys, I have to admit that. But moving on, we have something that might sound similar to a national preserve, that being a national reserve. This sounds like a pretty generic title you would give to a large mass of land, and we hear it in other parts of the world too. I'm sure we've all heard of a game reserve in Africa or something. However, the US only has 2 places that actually have this title, those being the City of Rocks in Idaho and eBay's Landing in Washington. These are like preserves once again, but are managed not just by the National Park Service, but also local powers too, like the state they are in. Another title the US can dole out to areas is National Recreation Area. These are titles for large areas of land where it's more expected for humans to go have fun in and do outdoor activities like fishing or swimming. Golden Gate in California is one of these. I never realized there was an actual Golden Gate. I always knew it was just the Golden Gate Bridge, but I never really realized the bridge was named after a wider area. So you learn something every day, I guess. But moving on, we have some titles which are super obvious and can kind of all be lumped together. These being National Seashores, National Lakeshores, National Rivers, and National Wild and Scenic Rivers. As the names imply, these are given to various water-based areas which have been given protective status. These titles have been given out to a load of different rivers and other bodies of water, more specifically the land next to the bodies of water, I guess. While it's kind of cool that they have all these different titles, they really could have all been bundled together as just National Waterways or something, right? 2 of particular interest I feel are National Trails and National Parkways. National Trails are specific areas of nature which contain designated walking trails through them. While these are technically different to things like national parks, they can be found within them too. Perhaps the most well-known of these being the Appalachian Trail, which spans over 2,000 miles and winds through no less than 14 states. That makes for one hell of a walk. But say you can't be bothered to walk something like this. That's when national parkways come into play. These are like the trails, but instead made for cars to drive through. Now, it'll be super easy to make a joke here about Americans being too lazy to walk or something, but nah man, definitely drive through some of these, they look incredible. And also, not everyone has the ability to walk 2,000 miles through 14 states. I know I don't. These are the titles the National Park System uses for places with nature at the heart of them. The rest tend to relate to human-made constructions or places of historic human importance. But we also have that title of National Monument, which as mentioned includes the likes of the Statue of Liberty, but also natural places like the Devil's Tower. This kind of bridges the gap between the two in a lot of ways. National monuments kind of have their own story. They came into being in 1906 as a way to designate smaller areas than national parks as places of importance. The title is purposefully ambiguous so they can cover both natural elements as well as human-made structures. It basically exists as a title to place on anything that contributes to the USA's heritage regardless of if it's natural or human-made. Hence why the Statue of Liberty and the Devil's Tower can both occupy this space. It's kind of a mess once again, and the impression I get it was made before we had all these other titles. But from here, we seem to be in the area of places which are purely artificial and have been given this kind of status due to their historic importance. This is perhaps best seen with places given the title of National Historic Site. These are areas in which important history played out. A great example of this being Little Rock Central High School in Arkansas. The US also has one international historic site too, that being Sun Crew Island found in Maine. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I'm going to give that a French pronunciation to be safe, but you get the idea. The reason it's international is because Canada play a role with it too, but to make things even more confusing, as well as having national historic sites, the US also has national historical parks too. These are similar to the sites, but instead of being a single building, tend to extend to wider areas. For example, the Harriet Tubman National Historic Park is found in New York and celebrates the life of the aforementioned Tubman. But moving on, we have another group of titles that can be bunched together. Titles belong to places with ties to war, primarily the War of Independence and the Civil War. These include national battlefield parks, national military parks, national battlefields, and national battlefield sites. From their names alone, you should get the idea they are all very similar to one another. Yet seemingly the states felt strongly enough that there should be different titles for these specific areas. But the final one I ought to cover is the title of National Memorial. This should be fairly easy to get your head around. These are monuments that memorialize specific historic events or people. Think of things like Mount Rushmore, the Lincoln Memorial, or the Pearl Harbor Memorial. These are all human-made structures that commemorate one thing in particular. I think what's interesting about these is how they differ from historical sites. Historical sites tend to be human-made structures, but they are ones that were directly involved in the history, while the monuments are things built after the fact to pay homage to the history. And you know what? I just think that's kind of neat. But these are the 19 titles that the USA's national park system uses when it comes to naming their places. And while some of them do make logical sense, things also get a bit messy at times clearly. This brings us back to the question at the start of this video. Gateway Arch, and why is it a national park? And the answer to that seemingly comes down to one thing: money. For the longest time, the arch was called something else entirely, known as the Jefferson National Expansion Memorial, as the whole thing was an ode to President Jefferson's idea of westward expansion. The bill was put in place to make it a national park, as it would bring more tourists into the area and they would stay longer and, of course, spend more money. And at the time it was put in place, people even suggested it become a national monument instead, which would have made way more sense. But clearly, the dollars spoke louder in all of this. And that's a bit confusing. But as I've already covered in this video, this whole naming system is a bit of a mess. Name Explain depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explain videos, and your name at the end of the video with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/Name Explain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm NameExplainYT, and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and once again, thank you all so much.